This is episode 2 of the Fatal Dating Tips. I feel as though with this episode, I am in danger of going to the dark side.
Am I the dark side?
The side of the romantics, as opposed
No,
to...
not the side. No. Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not. Delusion. I'm so sorry to have to say to you. And I fear, therefore, that in fact you're in the dark side and you've come to me for light. Of course you have. Absolutely not romantic. It's not romanticism, any of that stuff. This is more logical and hardcore. This is actual reality, as opposed to piecing together lovely concepts and ideas of things. So no, I would say you're in a deluded darkness, and you've come to me to be brought out into the white pure lights.
Okay, well then I stand corrected.
A perfect crime, it resonates a little like Nietzsche's famous phrase proclaiming the deity of God. But the symbolic murder of God in the 19th century was going to change the destiny of things. In the perfect crime, it's no longer a question of God, but of reality. And it's no more a symbolic murder, but an extermination.
Is there a tip that we should start with?
Yeah, the tip, as you well know, is called toss the Factberg. Factberg, one word. It comes from Fatberg. Do you know what a Fatberg is?
No, tell me what that is.
A Fatberg is a lot of baby wipes and other assorted plastic detritus that live in the sewers, certainly in London, probably in America too, and that block up the sewers and kind of, accreting ever more old nappies and used tampons and whatever else is going down there, and block up our drains so that we're not able to have healthy drains underneath our city. So that's a Fatberg, which they have to pulverize with vinegar or other sorts of things that eat away at disgusting old fat. So, but this is a Factberg. So this is something, an accumulation of lots and lots and lots and lots of facts that stick onto each other and sludge around and give the appearance of being a very logical, concrete, specialized system that you've done lots of research on. And in fact, you could endlessly research, you could endlessly add to this Factberg. Could be about anything, could be about somebody you're romantically interested in. So you've seen this person, you watch their YouTube channel, you become interested in them, you start researching, look at their Twitter, read a bit of them on where do they come from, where do they study, are they married, you assemble this Factberg about somebody, and then you assume that the Factberg is just the same thing as that person, and you can always add to it. And it's kind of a perverted way of going about to know somebody, which, a proper way of going about knowing somebody might be to talk to them, but this would be secretly CIAing them, basically. So that's what a Factberg is. Then you talked about some other things, which were pataphysics and Marxism, and you're a Marxist, so you don't like hearing, that's not the right thing to be. Furthermore, from what I've come to understand about you, Doug, and I could be wrong here, but a lot of your Marxism is about feeling that you're factually accurate, that it's about materialism, it's about talking the truth, it's about only saying what is true and not saying what is not true, and feeling would that be a fair way of saying how Marxists, how materialists go about their business?
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to go with an improv approach to critique rather than a pure negation. So I'm going to say yes, and Marxists want to understand what is not true as well, and why what's not true is necessary in a capitalist society. Okay,
and you say that schoolmarmishly, as though I might be saying something that was untrue, and that you are very empirical, almost a machine yourself, in the degree to which you are logical and fact-based and just say yes, no, depending on the truth or not of the thing. You sort of school mom judge. You're setting yourself up as the zero that will say if I'm swaying too far, deviating from from the truth. That's fine. You can go about doing
Yes,
that.
and I also think that I'm getting things entirely wrong and on purpose saying what I think is in error at the same time.
Okay. Well, that's a tremendous service that you're doing for the community as a sort of vicar of facts, an assembler of a congregation of people who might come together that through you and through the holy foolness, perhaps, of your aspect, truth or not truth can be. But there are limitations to what facts can do. For example, facts have got nothing to do with, for example, sex. When you have sex, perhaps, or when you enter, it doesn't have to be sex, when you enter a close personal realm with people, part of the joy of that is to say, get lost to all the vast accumulation of facts that endlessly pollute us, which we often get from the internet these days. But it's not just about the internet. This is a mindset, an enlightenment mindset, a post-religion mindset that says, let's forget about nonsense, let's make it logical. But then you become hyper-logical. Everything you do is within this realm, a very solitary realm. And sometimes this realm cannot give you what you need. This is why I said to you at the beginning, it's more factual than what a Marxist would say. That facts are not everything. If you are truly factual, you will have to say there is a limit to the use of these facts, and there are things beyond which the facts can't help us. Another example used is a map. This is an example from Baudrillard, which he got from Borges, and Borges perhaps got from Lewis Carroll. A map which is so accurate that it is the same size in the end as the kingdom that it describes. And in the Borges story, what happens is this map becomes too big, it gets tattered, it's useless because it's the same size, and it gets tattered remains in the desert. What Baudrillard says is, in fact, it's the other way around, that it's our reality these days that's become tattered in the desert, and we completely live in the map.
We will live in this world, which for us has all the disquieting strangeness of the desert and of the simulacrum, with all the veracity of living phantoms, of wandering and simulating animals that the death of capital has made of us. Because the desert of cities is equal to the desert of sand, the jungle of signs is equal to that of the forests. The vertigo of simulacra is equal to that of nature. Only the vertiginous seduction of a dying system remains, in which work buries work, in which value buries value, leaving a virgin, sacred space without pathways, continuous as Bataille wished it, where only the wind lifts the sand, where only the wind watches over the sand.
It makes you feel good. You're collecting facts. That's what you should be. That's what good people do in our society. We find out facts. But if all you do is find out facts, you're missing 10,000 other things. You're missing the human connection between things. You're missing, if what you're doing after the plane crash is finding every last tooth. Another thing that might be a more meaningful way is to stand, to feel, to be in the place, to say something, to speak about what's happened. But you don't do that. You just are collecting facts, and that should be a service into the greater good, but it replaces it and becomes everything. And in terms of how it works between people sometimes is, especially when you meet people online, I think what happens is, before you've met them in the flesh, or even if you've met them in the flesh briefly, you've then gone home, you've assembled your Factberg about them. And the Factberg is based on what they've said about themselves, what other people maybe have said about them. You've assembled this picture. And then when you go and meet that person and have your dates, you expect them to respond to what that picture is, because that's what has piqued your interest, the picture, the image, the Factberg that you have collected, as opposed to letting it happen not before, but during and after your interaction with them. I think what matters between people only is the interaction between them. The kind of, when you're not then with them, you're sitting back, you're constructing your Factbergs. That's not helpful, I don't think. I think you only get to know somebody by seeing them in action, I would say, Doug. And all the Factbergs in the world are not going to help you out with that. And it's not what you want either, is it? If you fall for somebody, in my tip, I talk about it. I think it's true. If you remember the first time you fell in love with someone when you're a teenager, if you were lucky, if that happened to you, everything is about being with that person in the moment, seeing who they are, wondering why it is they have this effect on you. Are they really trying to get to talk to them? Everything is about the live interaction. It's not about, oh, I've met this person, they're quite cute, let me go and do all this massive research on them, let me research them. Oh, this is who they are. Oh, now I've seen them in this formalized dating setting. Are they matching to this? Are they matching to this? And the problem with that also is you can almost feel like people come to you with their factbergs. They're showing you their bona fides in the society. And if they deviate from that, it's almost as if they've broken a contract with you. It's like, what? But you said to me that you were a Marxist, and you said to me you were caring. You said you like cats. Oh, no, you didn't like cats. You presented the factberg was incorrect, and therefore it's you're at fault rather than me at fault for having constructed this factberg based on my fantasies and what I drained about you from the internet.
Well, that sounds all very good and fine, but it also seems to me like it would put a tremendous amount of pressure on someone during a date to be very present and try to make something beautiful and spontaneous and wonderful out of the date. Like rather than it's nice to be able to lean back on these facts and have a little bit of a script, rather than having to.
Okay, as long as it's just a tool, as long as it's not everything, as long as it's not that you're there sitting with the person thinking, how are they going to look on my Instagram feed? How are they going to fit with my factberg? Because, actually the true danger of factbergs is another word, which is a self-berg, that you assemble a factberg not about other people, but about yourself. You are aware that other people are going to be assembling factbergs about you. So you present the materials online, and then within yourself, you come to understand it's better if I show myself to be a logical, sensible, consistent sort who does this, who wears this sort of thing, who says this sort of thing, because that's how everybody accesses people these days, is via facts. So let me get my facts all right. Let me look right. Let me think about what it is I want to say. Let me make sure that all my profiles are there. Then you've built yourself some absolutely monstrous prison, a self-berg, that you're going to spend your life in, marketing yourself to other self-bergs. And that is how your close personal connections, affection, it is going to be, utterly untranscendent, utterly disenchanted. So yeah, that puts a lot of pressure of you on the date or whatever. But that's what the fucking point is, right?
What I would be wary of is trying to recreate the 60s.
Yeah,
go in and like, okay, we're just going to do a be in here. We're just going to be here now together. We're going to wait until some spirit moves us.
This is another self-berg. This is another simulacra of a personality, which is what I'm saying a self-berg is, especially someone like you so versed in, let's call it prehistoric media culture of the Americas. You're just, the sense I sometimes get, Doug, is there's a library of rotating self-bergs drawn from different TV programs you saw in America in the 1970s and 80s. And you're selecting, other people might be selecting, the looks of Kim Kardashian from the cupboard to bring out to clothe themselves. But this is, sometimes I say I'm going too far here, Doug. I'm getting very personal. Sorry. Tell me if it's completely wrong. But I sense the brain, your brain is arranging these different images already that look right for screens. And now you sort of, when you said that to me, I was like, oh, it's Doug in his Austin Powers phase, coming in with some.
No, I was thinking of something much more highbrow than Austin Powers. I was thinking of My Dinner with Andre.
Mm-hmm.
And Andre describes, I think, being in Switzerland and getting a bunch of actors together, and there's no script, there's no play. They're just going to create something together as themselves.
Yeah. I agree very on that. No, I think practically the way to do it would be this. Let's do it. We'll practice.
Tell me, why do we require a trip to Mount Everest in order to be able to perceive one moment of reality? I mean, if your own mechanism is operating correctly, it would become irrelevant to go to Mount Everest and sort of absurd because, of course, on some level, obviously it's very different from a cigar store on 7th Avenue.
Well, I agree with you, Wally. But the problem is that people can't see the cigar store now. Things don't affect people the way they used to. It may very well be that 10 years from now, people will pay $10,000 in cash to be castrated just in order to be affected by something.
practically, the way to do it would be this. Let's do it. We'll practice. What I would do if I was pataphysically on a date with you, which I'm obviously not, but I'm sort of for the purposes of this, I would say to you, so Doug, tell me about your Self-Berg. What is your Self-Berg?
Oh, well, it started out on Facebook, probably. Actually, before I created my Self-Berg on Facebook, I was on LiveJournal.
This isn't what I self. No. Let's go even a stage back. Before you were thinking about how it would look purely on a screen, inside of yourself, how did you decide what you wanted your look to be? How did you construct the Doug? So, and then I want to hear about how did you put
I
it
liked
into
James Bond, and when I was a kid, and I would used to go to James Bond movies and then imagine that I was a spy, or that I was James Bond. There were a number of really good things about James Bond. One of them that was not so good, but that now, now I'm where I'm at now, maybe I should reconsider this judgment. But when I learned that he was a man in his 50s already, by the time I was idolizing him, I thought, oh dear, his grandfather is my hero. But now I'm thinking, well, no, hold on a minute. maybe that's good. James Bond is, 54 or whatever. But yeah, he would, he could woo the women. He could kill the bad guys. He could solve the crimes. He had that neat soundtrack, very good skier. So I would go to the movies and fantasize about being James Bond.
And
but never came close to living up to that. It was very sad for me to not be James Bond.
But bits of that must have entered into the Self-Berg. So what bits of the James Bond, the primal James Bond, have entered into the Self-Berg?
Well, I think that what happened was I started to aim my sights a little lower and off to the side. So rather than be like James Bond, who was too one-dimensional and also athletic and heroic in a way that I never was, I decided maybe Billy Crystal, Woody Allen type, a little more neurotic.
You went Jewish. You went Jewish. You had gone very Anglo, and then you started to go Jewish.
I just started to try to go Jewish, because I felt like that was, more achievable for me, and so I went in that direction. So I have a Jewish component, but basically, Woody Allen in Play It Again, Sam, where he fantasizes that he's the Marlowe, but in fact is this nebbish, neurotic nerd, but who nonetheless wins the girl. That's my Self-Berg.
Well, that's a.
What about yours? That's one of them.
No. We're just talking about your Self-Berg here. What
kind of date is this? Is it supposed to be reciprocal?
Can you see? I will tell you about my Self-Berg mainly. But do you see that this is actually a fruitful way of discussing? That I'm not just doing some piffle here. I'm giving you and the audience a very practical thing. I'd say this is how to date pataphysically. Ask people about their Self-Berg. Ask about the construction of it. Ask about how did it develop. And the interesting thing I wanted to get into, but you cut me short because you're so very keen to hear about my Self-Bergs, very sweet, is I do want to hear about the LiveJournal, about the MySpace, about the Friends Reunited versions of your Self-Berg that then have latterly become. And also I want to know, is the Self-Berg finished? Is there still work to do on the Self-Berg? That's what I want to know.
I sometimes think that I'm finished with it. I sometimes think that I need to move beyond it, but then the urge will come.
That's not my question. My question is I want to know, is the Self-Berg perfected? Not have you decided yet to trash the Self-Berg? That's my next question. Is the Self-Berg perfected?
Oh no, the Self-Berg is not perfected. I feel like there are many things about the Self-Berg that I would like to improve.
You see, that's the danger of a Self-Berg. Self-Bergs are never finished because they're always false. You're always building an image of yourself, which is what you want other people to see. And because it's never you, but it's something that's acquired from TV, adverts, stuff you've read, the way people look, other unprocessed stuff, in your heart, it's never, and you always have to check. Are the people seeing my Self-Berg? Is my Self-Berg coming across? It's a very neurotic way of being, endlessly having built a Self-Berg, knowing it's not complete, knowing you need to touch up the windows a bit, whatever, concerned people see this part of the Self-Berg that doesn't relate well to that part of the Self-Berg. Did they see it or not? Should I? That's the mentality. And that's utterly, obviously, masturbatory. It's not about actually having a connection with somebody. It's about making sure that you land correctly, and having decided those things about yourself. It takes a great deal to be able to say, I've met somebody with whom I can communicate, and all this stuff that I have accreted, my Self-Berg, should go out the window. There's too much, and often there's too much professionally even at stake to throw away the Self-Berg. You've come so far, but then the horror of it is you live inside that Self-Berg for life. And perhaps what happens as your life comes close, draws near to ending, is you think, what the fuck? Why have I wasted my time living in the Self-Berg? Why was I never myself? Why did I never connect with people, do the things I wanted to do, throw away all those things, stop trying to be consistent? Why, and I think it was easier in the past to not have Self-Bergs and to throw away Self-Bergs because you could do stuff and it was not always being recorded, it wasn't being screenshotted, checked back on later. Oh, he said this then, or he said that. The pressure to be consistent is massive and mad, because obviously we're not consistent. We are human beings. Different things happen to us. Our opinions change. We receive epiphanies, educations, bad things happen, all sorts of things. We're not consistent, but yet this impulse is only about trying to make things factual and consistent, which doesn't apply to people. So you see, I've done a lot of talking. I haven't told you about my Self-Berg at all. I don't think I'm going to tell you about my Self-Berg.
Fine. But, well, what I was going to say is the other thing I noticed about my Self-Berg, and you pointed it out, was that it's built upon a lot of media, some books and comic books and some real people. I was going to say, probably my Self-Berg really started with an attempt to identify with my father, to get all Freudian or psychological about it all. But if you stay at the level of the media and the kind of pop cultural references that start to build up in your mind and form into some sort of personality, what I found is that not only do you have to continually perfect your understanding and image of yourself as a Self-Berg, but you also have to keep updating the material, because if you don't, you look helplessly and hopelessly out of touch. All of your Self-Berg is from from 1977 to 1993, and then it just stopped.
Yeah, it's a horror show. It's not right, Self-Berging. It's what lots of people do a lot of the time, but it isn't right. And what you should do instead is, as my tip is titled, toss the Self-Berg. And so I was thinking about, have you seen the film Notting Hill?
No, I don't think I have. See, there it goes. So again, I'm out of date. Well, but when did that even come out?
It's a really old film. Julia Roberts and
1999. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Right.
No. But therefore, do you know Julia Roberts' famous line from it? She says to Hugh Grant, and the plot of it is, she's a big time Hollywood actress. He's a secondhand bookshop owner.
Sure he is.
Yes, sure he is. In Notting Hill. But they fall for each other. Anyway, she says to him at the end of the film, she says, look, even though she's a big Hollywood actress, she says, I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. So what I think is, no, that this is not the way of going about stuff. The way to go about stuff, if you really, really want to connect with somebody, is to say, I'm a nothing, standing in front of a nothing, asking for nothing. That's a much better way of proceeding, because that is much more factual and logical than the whole mess of Self-Bergs, the whole mess of the Factbergs, of having assembled this stuff that looks, because it uses the language of facts, like it's hyper-realistic, very much, but is actually just bollocks, because it's just words. It just doesn't mean anything whatsoever. It is about preferring data to dating, Doug.
Okay, I'm nearly convinced. You've almost moved me from 2 + 2 = 4 to just 0 or nothing. But I'm not entirely sure I understand, because I still have, well, first of all, I have so many Self-Bergs that I could refer to at this moment, like Slavoj Žižek. A late addition to my Self-Berg.
A late addition to the Self-Bergorama. Yes, but So
Zizek would say, the most arrogant thing you can say is to claim to be nothing. And he has an old joke where there's a rabbi in the synagogue, and I'm not exactly sure how it goes, but one of the parishioners, I'm such a goy. One of the Jewish members of the audience say, Rabbi, before God, I'm nothing, I am nobody. And he's a big business leader in the community, and he's trying to show his humility in the synagogue to the rabbi, and his friend says, who's also a millionaire sitting next to him, says, I too am nothing, I'm no one in front of God. And then this guy behind him in the back says, me too, I'm nothing, I'm no one. And they look back, and there's this pauper sitting back there, and they say, who the hell are you to say you're nobody and nothing?
Well, there you go. But what you're showing is not really people who say that they're nothing. You're talking about the very worst sort of people, the fake nothingers, the people who, that it's very, to say, to hold up your Self-Berg, to throw all of that away is an act of incredible vulnerability. And the very worst thing that you have to be very careful who you select to do this with. You can't just be rushing around town discarding Self-Bergs left, right, and center. You need, of course, a degree of Self-Bergness simply as your defense about being in the world. But if you find someone and you think this person gets it, this person understands that we need to be pataphysical, that this is all nonsense, that we think of ourselves as highly logical culture, but we're anything but. It's a simulacra, it's a fake logical culture. But I see that you see that. Great. So I will be utterly vulnerable to you, which is, I would say, a good and pleasurable thing, something to look forward to be utterly vulnerable with somebody. But if that person has faked the knowledge of nothing, that's a very dangerous person. And there are people who do that. There's lots of people who do that. It's very hard to truly throw off all the Self-Berg. You need to do an analysis, as I've been helping you to do a little bit on this. What is this? Podcast intervention pseudo date. You have to excavate it. You have to excavate it and take each bit of it and throw it away, and not just reach for the Factberg of it. Look at me. This is the ways in which I can prove that I know that I am nothing. No, it only works by deeds, and it only works by a consistency of every deed that you do.
Okay, but I feel like when you ask me, how did your Self-Berg come into being? What are the early origins of the Self-Berg that is now Doug Lain? And I mentioned James Bond, and then I admit that I traded James Bond for Woody Allen. That seems like a bad trade.
With Zizek.
With Zizek, yeah, that's the path.
I can see that Self-Berg.
That could be a deterioration. But anyhow, when I tell you that story, I do feel like I am in a way abandoning my Self-Berg just by telling you that, because what I ought to do is when you ask me who's my, what's my original Self-Berg, I might say something like, well, when I was a young boy, I went to, the Episcopal Church and Sunday school, and I learned about Jesus Christ, my Savior, and he was my Self-Berg. Or, I learned about Abraham Lincoln in school, and he was, or something more noble and less egotistical and trivial.
And then you're just faking stuff up. Is that what you do, Doug?
No, I don't. But the temptation would be there to have a good Self-Berg.
Okay, but it wouldn't work. Well, it depends. The function of your Self-Berg then is just a sort of something that looks good to lots of people. That's what I'm sensing. You're not devising a particular Self-Berg for me, because it wouldn't look good. Because if we were on a date, because I'm much more forensically analytical and materialist than you, I would easily uncover the layers of your Self-Berg, because I would do the kind of questioning that we're doing now, which I think is.
Well, I'd have to prepare ahead of time and collect the data. If I was going to go on a date and do this, I'd have to write up a particularly detailed and convincing version of myself.
Okay. Which is why it's never safe to give yourself to somebody. I mean, obviously, having sex with somebody is not giving yourself to somebody, but it's never a good idea to fully give yourself to somebody, which means to fully believe what they're telling you the first time you see them, or the second time you see them, or perhaps even the 10th time you've seen them, slowly accreted over time. You might come in with your very well-rehearsed Self-Berg that you've workshopped in the actor's studio and done a tremendous amount of rehearsing on, and it would fool me, perhaps, in our first date. But by the time it gets to the 10th date, I'm going to, especially if it's a very elaborate Self-Berg that you've set up and it really bears very little relationship to your reality, the holes in that Self-Berg are going to be clear. And that's really an embarrassing place to be in. Somebody who's, flashing their holy Self-Bergs. That's nobody wants anything like that. Then it's like, okay, you're weird, goodbye. So I wouldn't advise going down that tack. But do you see, you said to me, if we were pataphysically going on a date, what, and you expected me to say, oh, we're going to talk about blue monkeys flying in from, no, it is about talking about something ridiculous, a Self-Berg, and being forensically analytical about it, and therefore liberating you, Doug, from your delusion.
Oh, thank you. Well, let me ask you this, though, because you mentioned that you can have a fake Self-Berg, but the Self-Berg itself is a fake.
No,
but somehow
the Self-Berg is always fake. But you innovated. You said, well, knowing retrospectively that I'm going to be in this state interrogated about my Self-Berg, I will preempt that by coming up with a fake self. You are the originator of the concept of the fake Self-Berg, of the of the bait and switch Self-Berg.
Well, I'm glad to have invented something. But okay,
so then what would happen is by the 10th date, I'm like, Doug came at me he told me how he liked, everything was based on Mother Teresa, but I've seen that that's not it. So I'd say, okay, what I know about Doug is he's very creative and makes fake Self-Bergs. Secondly, underneath the fake Self-Berg, there is a Self-Berg, definitely there is, because only people with advanced Self-Bergs would be in the business of making fake Self-Bergs. So let's interrogate what that Self-Berg is. Let's get to the me's. I mean, I don't know why I would be going on all these dates with you. Perhaps I'd be a friend.
Well, I do. I mean, come on. Clearly.
Okay, but by the time the time I discovered that you had constructed a fake Self-Berg in order to impress me and thought that would be able to be something you could consistently play, for the rest of our married lives.
Oh my gosh.
Then what I would see is like, okay, I probably wouldn't want to carry on dating you. But if I was a clinical psychotherapist or someone nosy or whatever else, I might just carry on, just in the same way that people write back to people from princes from Nigeria who are offering lots of, if you do certain things, and people sometimes write back just for fun saying, yes, no, I'd like to help you with your transferring of your funds. What can I do? And go quite far down the line before doing nothing else. So I might try that with you, especially if I was somebody, which I am, interested in dating and Self-Bergs. I think, wow, I'm onto a winner here. Let's see how this one operates.
Okay, so I agree with you that creating a fake Self-Berg would probably be a mistake. I would not write down, if I were to write a book of fatal dating tips, I would not write down, create a fake Self-Berg to make sure you wow the ladies. That would probably not be my approach. Although if the name of the book was Fatal Dating Tips, then maybe I would, just so that everyone's relationships would end with a grisly, fate. But
but that's because your dating tips would be the normal word we understand, fatal, whereas we know that I'm using it in the way that Baudrillard does, which just means unusual, coming in from a different place, coming in from a non-Factbergy place.
It's fatal to the Factbergs, fatal to the fake selves, the Self-Bergs, but it's not fatal to the living creatures, the nothings that we are. Right?
Something like that. Seems very beautifully wrapped up. Well done. I think maybe I.
Thank you.
For perfect crime, it resonates a little like Nietzsche's famous phrase proclaiming the deity of God. But the symbolic murder of God in the 19th century was going to change the destiny of things. In the perfect crime, it's no longer a question of God, but of reality. And it's no more a symbolic murder, but an extermination.